Last June, Bridgeport's Barnum Museum was hit by a rare Connecticut tornado, which did millions of dollars in damage to the structure and the priceless collection of artifacts within. More than 8 months later, on February 25th, museum representatives were joined by a group of supporters and Park City officials, as well as the team of recently hired architects to launch the restoration of the facility and its damaged contents. The Newtown Bee was there and had an opportunity to chat with Barnum Museum Director and Curator Kathy Marr about the damage and the anticipated journey to return the Barnum Museum to the international destination it has been for museum lovers and fans of Phineas T. Barnum.
Perhaps the tornado was a blessing in disguise, because they're going to be able to get into some areas of the building and the infrastructure that were never accessible before, and perhaps even bring this building from a historic perspective back to a place that it may not have seen since the day it was built, or possibly even better.
Well, what's fascinating about this project, you know, when you're hit with a natural disaster, you immediately go into trauma. There are a million decisions that you have to make immediately to respond. And when you're dealing with a National Historic Site and a significant collection, you have to pull back the knee-jerk reaction, normal human reaction to, oh God, get it out of the way, get it out of the way, and just say, don't touch it. It needs to be cleaned. There's no place to put the contaminated artifact that would be safer than it is right now. So an old conservator's adage is better is the enemy of good. So it took a number of months to plan, bring in the right teams of architects, conservators, to examine each individual thing, whether the thing was actually the structure or Barnum's dishes, so things could get cleaned and appropriately tracked, registered, processed. It's a museum. We have to log and digitize everything. Now, as far as the building goes, in the 1980s, when the modernization was done in the building, it covered a lot of the original historic fabric of the architecture. And what we're finding is there are magnificent moldings that are covered with modern walls, trims, different types of detail, no painting, fanciful painting applications, but most certainly the wood trims. And all of that is going to be exposed for the first time in a long, long time. And as a historic restoration, it's really our obligation to see if we can bring back those features instead of covering them up again. It's brilliant. It's forensic. It's archaeology, really. There's no textbook for this. There are no museums who have actually experienced anything like this. The closest example from the emergency museum people down in Washington, is the closest we've got is the Katrina examples. So that's the best we could do. There have been tornadoes in libraries where, again, it's like get the books out, but they said 8 years after the tornado, they're still finding glass. What do you expect? The people who write disaster plans usually have never lived through a disaster. And I wrote the Barnum Museum's disaster plan, and one of the first things, it says make sure you know your insurance company's phone number, it's at hand. Well, it's in my head, but they were only a couple of blocks away, so they were in the tornado too. So what do you do with that? And who would expect a tornado in an urban center?
So this is what Mayor Bill Finch had described to me as one of the first and only things he remembers visiting the Barnum Museum as a child. This is P.T. Barnum's famous mummy and the wonderful and beautiful ornate casing that's displayed here. Sorry about the lights if you're looking. But tell us. This was probably one of the ones that was really important to save.
Absolutely, yeah. We've done so much research on the mummy in recent years, and interestingly, the mayor came when he was a small boy. That's when everybody believed the mummy was, in fact, a male. But working with Quinnipiac University in the bioanthropology department, CAT scans revealed, in fact, this is a woman. And not 2,500 years old, as it was believed to be according to the hieroglyphics, but 4,000 years old. One thing that was very common during the 19th century, and it wasn't just Barnum, they were unearthing mummies constantly, and you could go to bazaars and you could pick your mummy and pick your coffin, and they didn't necessarily start the afterlife together. I'm thrilled to say, because this room is contained in the museum. On the third floor, there wasn't major impact and did not get as high a relative humidity spike as many of the other areas in the museum, so we were happy about that. However, when we start doing all of the construction, the pre-schematics, we can't have her here. So the folks at the Peabody at Yale Museum have kindly, graciously offered to take her to their storage rooms and possibly even display her at the Peabody at some point during our downtime. All of the glass and the debris and the garbage just came shooting in through here. And I'll tell you, it was not even an hour before I was in here working on finishing up the exhibition, and all of the Barnum artifacts were out in cases. I'm working on the final designs so we could put the checklist together. Had I been in the room, it would have been bad if I was in the room because I would have been covered with glass. But all of that would have been exposed to this, and it would have been so much worse, so we're lucky. But you know, a good example is the worst, and you can get a close-up here. It's hygroscopic shock. The Tom Thumb carriage, which is one of our prized artifacts. And still, you can see all of this flaking from the carriage wheels. And basically that happens when relative humidity spikes really fast, and it just snapped the wood, and then the paint is just crumbling off. And, you know, that's just something that you can't prevent after something, you know, catastrophic like that. So it's bringing in really exceptional carriage conservators who can deal with consolidating, reapplying, and stabilizing this. No, nothing's being put back here. After we get the artifacts out, the whole room has to be cleaned. And because this is the wall that got the most damage, the architects have to come in here, and these walls are probably going to have to go. So nothing's going back in this room for a long time. One of the most complicated things to do is to transport artifacts off-site, because then you have a whole off-site storage, and you have to track that, and you need the whole collections process to make sure that's all, you know, being managed appropriately, environment. You're a nervous wreck when you have to move artifacts, let alone the entire contents of a museum.
To create a first of its kind opportunity that can help potentially preserve, protect, and restore museum artifacts for the next century or beyond, it really just is, it boggles the mind.
It is amazing, and I have thought about it.
Getting chills.
Huh?
I'm getting chills thinking
it is. It's amazing, and you're absolutely right. And we hadn't talked about this before, but one thing that we're really thinking about, we had conservation students from the University of Delaware, NYU, and UConn come up to help us with some of the outload, because maybe this is a program we can build into the museum's ongoing educational opportunity, always having conservation students work on collections of the museum, and then maybe even looking out to some other collections across Connecticut and say, okay, we can take 3 objects this year. We're going to have students from Buffalo or Delaware come in, do the treatment reports and the applications, and it won't cost you $3,000, because conservation is expensive. And they're getting the opportunity to have the education of working with real objects, real material, and that's priceless. And when you work in a museum, everything is about the object. You know, having secondary type of things, textbooks, it doesn't give you the taste for the authentic. So we really, you know, we have an opportunity to blow this out of the water and make it an extraordinary educational hub for conservation and conservation study as well. And if we put that book together and we start traveling the circuit, yeah, Mr. Barnum, it's just Mr. Barnum reinventing himself yet again.
In 2011.
In 2011.
Kathy Marr, thanks so much.
Thank you so much.